Hi everyone. My headset's all tangled. Hello everyone. Welcome to Where I'm From 166 with Beth. Um, what have you been reading recently? I read All My Puny Sorrows by Marion Taves. You say it Taves. I learned that from the New Yorker article I read about her, and it's the first book of hers I've read, which seems kind of shocking because she's a big deal. I really enjoyed it. And Beth, I'm gonna untangle this headset, Beth. Um, oh, look at how seamless.
We've practiced for days.
Oh god, I was like, oh no, I need to get my headset. Do you have this problem?
No, I am. I have been. My arm is not long enough, and I'm on a weird lighting problem. That's me. There's a reason that I'm a writer and not like a TV star, and that's because I don't really like being in the camera. But here I am.
Yes, and I appreciate you joining me. And it was funny. I had one of these the day after the election, and I thought, oh, what am I gonna say? But I was so grateful I had it. It gave me something to engage with that is meaningful to me,
Yes,
which is
yes,
the end, but keeps us going.
yes.
So
And over my shoulder, I realized, don't know how to get
I don't know
there.
why I'm tilting
Is
my head like that'll help.
that's exactly how this works. That is my muse, F. Scott
Oh,
Fitzgerald. That's an original oil painting that my mother found in an antique shop and had in the house for a long time, and then now it's mine.
oh,
So
it's really sweet.
yeah.
And I said in our previous try, I love your sweater, but I'm going to say it here too. I love your sweater. How gorgeous. That's
Well,
the kind
thanks.
of thing I would buy and never wear in Los
Yeah.
Angeles and just look at.
I needed it today.
Yeah.
First time I've worn it all season. It's been really warm here. So
Yes, it's been warm, lots of places, but that's a conversation for another day. Um, is there anything you would like to say before Owen returned? Thanks for coming back,
Owen,
Owen.
now we're gonna give Owen a big fist bump here. Owen is the world's greatest
Oh,
nephew, and he is marrying the world's greatest fiance, and love him very much. So it's fun to have him here.
no, he's giving you hearts because that's all he could do. Oh, he could also leave a comment,
Oh well,
but
I told him when he was finding us quite by accident a few hours ago that I was asked to write a poem by you, and I'm sure you're going to set this up. But Owen, just hang on here because your dad's in this poem, and so
oh,
is our family history. So
yes, I don't set it up much. It's a poem where I'm from. It's inspired by George L. Lyon's poem Where I'm From, and a man, Georgella tells me, named Fred First, created these prompts. And with these prompts, her poem is taught in classrooms all over the country, all over the world. Jill Biden has taught it. She hears, through the grapevine, all these wonderful people who are teaching it. And she, to me, has been such a positive and wonderful presence in my life and a real embodiment of creative generosity. Because I just started doing this on a whim. And then I reached out to her after doing it for a while, just saying, hey, I'm doing this thing. I hope it's okay with you. If it's not, I'll stop. And she was like, oh, yeah, I love it. And every time I talk to her, she thanks me for this. And I I've known people in my life who aren't like that. So I have real gratitude for someone who is,
yeah, yeah.
and she is.
The poem itself is interesting as we'll get into it because it has so many grammatical almost glitches that it's a stumble in a way to
Mm,
follow it. To
mm.
follow the patterning. I had to break it in a few places, but I am someone who's always breaking the rules of language, so it really appealed very much to me. And
Me too.
so, yeah, I thought it was interesting to write it.
Good. Yeah. So if you want to read it or if you want to say anything else, it's really up to you.
All right, so here we go. Owen, this is for you. Not that I knew that until like 2 hours ago. It's the poem is called "Where I'm From." That is the given title, and then as we were saying, there's a sort of patterning that nouns and verbs. We find our own story that falls into the slippage of that pattern and rhythm here. So I am from tadpole creeks, from mossed stones and quartz splits. I am from the wet mud of the storm days, nut brown and slither, it wouldn't wash out. I am from the strawberry patch, the great oak tree, the hooked branch my brother climbed in search of blue jays. I am from Monopoly and checkers, from Dandy, Imperio, and Margaret Finley. I'm from the ones who danced, from the ones who said Betsy and Betty Boop, but never Beth. I'm from the Lord is my shepherd and Good Friday hush. I'm from Aunt Anne and Uncle Lloyd, purple cabbage and sweet ham, from my mother's long injury and my father's wish. On the radio in the living room is a book built of wood and paper, a book my mother built, square photo by square photo, tucked into the ears of time. I am from the wish for then. So there it is.
Beautiful.
There it
Um,
is.
the hush, like your Substack. When I read that, I immediately thought of your Substack. So,
It's that word hush has become increasingly important to me, but also when juxtaposed against that word howl.
mhm,
The Substack has become it's called The Hush and the Howl, for those who don't know. And um, it's become a lifeline, especially at these
mhm,
times for me.
mhm,
It is the freest I have ever felt as a writer, and also the most accompanied because I am making art that goes with each piece, my own
mhm,
art. And so, at a time where it's sometimes difficult to know what our purpose is,
mhm.
wrestling with idea and story and memory, and often books. I write not essays about books, but sort of experiential prose poems about the books I've read most recently, even before she won the Booker, Samantha Harvey's Orbital, and old books like Max Porter's Grief is a Thing with Feathers, and uh, so many books that is the safe keep that I have just eased into. And it would be one thing to just be reading them and maybe tell a friend about it and talk to a friend. It's another thing to talk to myself about
Mhm.
them. And then it's the last thing to put it into Substack and find other people's experiences with those books. I don't always write about books. Today, for example, I was posting about this question I sometimes get about why I have so many books out there. And it's a
You do have a
funny,
lot of books out there.
yeah, but
That's why.
it's a funny question because I don't really have the time to write that many books. Some of them, of course, are children's books. But it can't be a condemnation of one's obsessions. You know, the books, there are many books that I've written that have not been published or will not be published.
Mhm,
But I am uh, most alive when I'm making something. And
mhm,
so it's what keeps me grounded, tethered,
mhm,
accompanied. And it is the last thing. It is none of the books I've made, not one of them, have come from ambition. I'm not an ambitious writer, but I am an engaged one.
mhm. I think it's hard to write from him. I'm interested in a bunch of things you said there, but the last thing you said was ambition. And I think I have an MFA in cinematic arts, which was film and television back then. And so ambition was a big part of that program, um, as I think it is in a lot of MFA programs, regardless of the discipline. Um, it's hard to maintain your voice. I think it was hard for me to maintain my voice. And it just felt like there were trade-offs that were happening. And then I still wasn't as successful as they told me I should be. And not being successful at that when you've sort of given part of yourself away, it doesn't feel good. It feels worse.
Yeah, I think that I mean I'm sorry you've gone through that, and I respect what you're saying. And I am not going to pretend that it hasn't been a painful process to be published and to watch so much happen in other spheres.
Hmm.
But I think you have to always be very clear with yourself. And I was from my very first book, my very first poem, my very first published essay, why I am doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that has never really changed. And in fact, the more committed I have become to doing this for my own reasons, the happier I am, the smaller the books become, the
Hmm.
smaller the presses sometimes that I'm working with becomes. And I'm happier each time
Hmm.
out because the book looks more and more precisely like I want it to look.
Hmm. I understand that. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think as a person who's just finished a manuscript and is starting to take it out like to the world to try to find a play home for it, more than anything, I want it to be, like you say, safekeeping. I want it to be what it's meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
not something else. And that's more important to me than other things. But
You know, I was with a number of large publishing houses over the years, and um, I there were some covers that to me I never wanted to
mm,
pick that book up. I
yeah.
never it didn't speak to me. My last published book, My Life in Paper, Temple University Press, they allowed me to design the cover. To my
Mm,
marbled papers are the end papers. It's a beautiful hardcover book. I have cyanotypes in black and white throughout as 11 chapter dividers. So when I hold that book in my hand, it's an unusual hybrid book. The structure is unusual. When it's there with me, it is something that feels very right. And in April, on April 1st, I'll have this first novel for adults published. It's a bit of a hybrid book. There's some memoir element to it, but it is inspired by the life I imagine my grandmother,
mm,
this Margaret Finley, and whose
mm,
son was Dandy Imperial, and whose daughter was my mother, Lord Kephart. It is a life that I imagined for her in
mm,
1918 Philadelphia. I know she would have been 16. I know where she lived. I know where she worked. And I know the songs that she loved as she grew older. That book is going to be published by Tersolo Press. That is a press in Philadelphia run by the daughter of C.K. Williams, who was an extraordinary, extraordinary poet who I had the chance to interview years ago for a magazine. Saw him again, reviewed one of his books, and it was a complete surprise to me that Jessie, who helms that small press, is CK's
mm,
daughter. And
mm,
so when Jessie and I became the very fast and dear friends we now are, it's almost we call each other the sisters we never,
mm.
you know, we are so close. And so to publish a book with someone who I absolutely love, who I'm in touch with 3 or 4 days times each day, um, to know that there's the legacy of her dad is sort of with us, and it's about my family. I wouldn't trade that for a $100,000 advance with Simon and Schuster for the world. My husband's incredible. My husband's an oil painter, among other things, and his a painting that he created a face about a year ago, and we were thinking about the cover. I remembered this face, and she looks just like my grandmother would
Mm.
have looked at that time, in wearing a hat that would have been in vogue at that time, and it's just exquisite how everything I love is going to be inside this book. And I think, you know, what's the trade-off? The trade-off is, oh, you know, you could have. I don't even know anymore what's possible, and even
I
the big
certainly
five,
don't.
even the big five. But what you want, I think, what you want in the end is to feel as if you've you have put forward your very best thing. And
Mhm.
with Jesse at my side, my husband's image on the cover, my grandmother's spirit in there, you know, it is the best thing I can do.
So I look forward to reading it. I think it sounds wonderful. I think collaborating and working with people we love, there's nothing
Yeah,
better. I think it's just
yeah,
the best, and I it keeps me going because just being by myself, I don't know, it's not enough for me. I really enjoy the process of
yes,
making something better
yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah. I
Um,
wish you luck with it.
oh,
And
thanks.
how do you feel it is finished, complete,
I'm done
everything
with
you
it
make
for
it?
now. It said goodbye to me the last time I looked at
Yeah,
it. It was like we're done.
uh, uh, yeah,
Like I've written enough things that when you read it that last time and it's like, which is not
yeah,
to say that there won't be revisions, but it's, yeah. And I've had other people read it and they're like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. So, I am very happy with it, which is not something I say,
Yeah,
lightly. So
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. I'm very curious to see what happens with it. And, I'm trying to be hopeful. I've had a lot of rejection in my life, so my my first instinct is not hope, but I'm trying to be
Yeah,
hopeful that it will find the right home, which is really the hope. It's not about the
that is
other things;
that's
it's the right home.
that is it, and that's what you hold
Yeah,
on to throughout the entire process. Yeah.
right. So, yeah, and then I'm sure you go through it too. It's like, so now there will be this space, where that
Mm-hmm.
was, and what will fill that space, and that's exciting too. Like, what
Yeah.
will that next thing be? So,
Yes, I think that this novel in the spring will be my last, full on book like that. I
hmm
still do
hmm
work in some of the children's book world, but yeah, there comes a time where there's a sense of completion, and I I also have just finished teaching through Juncture these last four really intense workshops called Taking Flight. They took months and months to put together. They were deeply involving, had to do with art and music and the intersections with writing. And when I was done with those, I also felt, I don't know if I can think any bigger or broader than this. So then you are left in this space because when you're spending 2 or 3 hours every morning thinking about presentation you want to give, when you're thinking about how what Van Gogh's work and Starry Starry Night, how his approach to that canvas actually erupts for writers, and what writers can you share that sort of have a similar artistic process as Van Gogh? What prompts? You're thinking about that for months and months, and then you finally give these presentations, and there's an exhale. You're relieved that it's done, and then there's this, okay, what is next? And for me, the Substack is the next, but the Substack has become as much of an intellectual challenge as the writing of the books and the taking flight was. As long as you're totally and fully mentally engaged with something, your life has a purpose. And for me, the Substack is that, and I think it will be for a long time.
I think that's beautiful. And I wanted to go back to you talking about writing about books on your Substack, about reading the book, engaging in a conversation with yourself about the book, and then sharing that. I think those are the three things that you
Yeah,
said.
and then making art. For example, Laura Pashby's Chasing Fog. It's a very interesting memoir, rich with mythology and history. She is a photographer of fog,
Mm-hmm.
very well known now, and I bought this book and waited for it to arrive from England. And during those 2 weeks, I made art for that book. I'm doing some new kind of monotyping, mono printing, and collaging with different kinds of very transparent mulberry papers. And I made fog. I called the piece Foggish. So it was almost like I didn't know Laura before,
Mm-hmm.
although it turns out she knew me. And so it was really interesting to
No.
discover. But to be able to create that for,
Mm-hmm.
like, to just give someone the art. And again, they're not reviews, they're
No.
experiences.
Right.
The piece I wrote about Orbital, Sam Anthony Harvey's great book about the astronauts going, around and around. I finished reading that book the day after the election and wrote about it because that book is all about perspective. It's all about
Mm-hmm.
they're up there and they're looking down on this they're going through in a 24-hour period, 14 different days or nights or whatever that
Mm-hmm.
cycle is. And I think that I can now, released from some of the other work I do, more fully understand just why a book is important in the moment.
Yeah. The book I was reading was this book, which is an older book, All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Taves. And as I was reading it, it's fiction, but it's very much closely about her own life, about the suicide of her sister and that sort of time when she was trying to die, and sort of the conversation they were in. And it was a really interesting book for me to be reading during
Mm-hmm.
that time about, we can't always understand what people want, and
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
can't tell them what to want, and we can't make them want what we
Yes.
want. All we can do is live our lives and do the best we can every day. So,
And
she can't
also,
make her sister live. I certainly can't make people do what I want them to do, like,
no,
so
but
it was
I think we can make a shift in terms of the way we generate and distribute information. And the other thing that I'm
for
spending a lot
sure.
of time now is reading deeply into the Substacks and the worlds of Jay Koss and Robert Hubble and Simon Rosenberg and of course Heather Cox Richardson, and really looking at this information ecosystem. And
Yeah.
I am hoping that I can find a way to be part of the next
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how
Mm-hmm.
truth, which has been my life's journey and mission,
Mm-hmm.
truth memoir, how I can make some sort of difference in the shift of an ecosystem that allows people are making choices, but not entirely always based on as much information as they might have before them to make that to make their choices. So
That's certain.
I'd love to be part of providing more truth so that people have more options in their own thinking.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm headed, I think.
Yeah. I always I appreciate so many things about you. Just your general being. You're just such a like, I don't know, I find you to be such a peaceful, even when you're going through things. I feel like your presence is just really reassuring in a way, like, and generous and kind and inspiring.
Thank you.
And um and you see it in your work and in the work that you're engaged with, and that I really love, it appears from here, that you continue to follow the muse wherever it takes you. And um, that's something I aspire and attempt to do because it brings me joy. And I think that's where, like you say, the truth is.
Mm.
Like, I might not describe myself as in search of truth, but I am. And I think that that's where it is.
You know, I thank you for what you said. I have fought my way toward internal peace.
Sure.
That wasn't who I was all the time. Um, but I also, there's so much. I'm reading right now the newest collection of Best American Essays,
Mm-hmm.
and in there is Sally Tisdale. I read it when it came out. I think it was in Harper's. Enormously interesting piece on how memory and memoir work. She is, I mean, from the very beginning, she's been a
Mm-hmm.
beacon for me. Um, I highly recommend reading that because when you think about how uh, just frail, tricky, inconsistent, unreliable memory is.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here we are trying as writers, whether it's poetry or truth inflected
Mm-hmm.
fiction or memoir itself, we are trying to um, we're trying to center ourselves in something we know to be true. And of course, memory doesn't yield so much certainty. And so I think that what might bring what might make me who I am right now, for better or for worse, is that I'm more fully aware of what the level of uncertainty is. Early on, when I taught memoir, I was more rigid and rigorous in my definitions of what could be in
Mm-hmm.
the form, and I think I've grown more not permissive of those who lie or those who stretch the truth when they know just for the sake of shock. I'm not.
Right.
That's
That's a different thing.
not
Yes, I know what
Sally
you're
and
saying.
Sally Tisdale and I are still on the same page on that. But I am aware of how hard it is to get anything right for any of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a you can forgive yourself when you have that attitude, but you can also be more embracing of others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, yes, agreed. Um, I will read that. I haven't read it. There's so many things to read. Do you find that? I feel
Yes,
like the more I read, the more there is to read, and I love reading and read a lot. But it's like, wow, um,
yes.
It's endless.
I think you have to me. I find certain hours of the day that are the hours when, if I can spend them that way, that those are the hours that I will read. I'm also been doing a lot of shopping in my own bookshelves. So going
Hmm.
back to Wallace Stegner's
Hmm.
Crossing
Hmm.
Mississippi, and the great Michael Ondaatje's and the Alice McDermott's, and I think it's really important, as we continue to try to hold ourselves together as human beings, to go back to what we read and loved years ago
Hmm.
and find out, why did we love that? Who
Hmm.
who were we then? Are we the same person now? So I'm trying to bring in a kind of balance between what is new in my
Hmm.
world and
Hmm.
what was already there. It also is helpful because I have a really small house and lots of books, and so it's really great to go shopping in my own bookshelves. Ask my husband.
I did some of that last year. I read a few of my favorite, or what I remembered as being some of my favorite books. And it was interesting too, as I was writing about that person that I was,
Mhm.
revisiting those books that she loved.
Yeah,
It helped me be in communication with her.
yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah. And then there's always the marginalia that you might have written, and they go, wait, what? Why did I
mm,
underline that?
yeah, in
No,
that moment.
yeah. Who were
Yeah.
we then? So, yeah, I think we're constantly trying to knit ourselves back together from who we think we were to who we hope we are, to all the little failures in between. And I think that, especially right now, there's a lot of solace to be taken in books, but there's also the best books require us, or seem to ask of us, to be our really, truly, to be our best self. So, what are we called to be and to do in this moment now? And I think that I'm also searching for that in the books that I read.
So I did want to just, before we wrap up, did you have anything you wanted to say about the process of writing
Oh,
this
that.
poem?
Right.
I
That's
thought it
what
was also interesting at the end of your poem when you describe how your mother, I assume it's a picture album that your
yeah, if
mother
I wouldn't,
made.
sitting like 7 feet from me right now.
Is it?
Um,
But it reminded me also of your work with paper and
yeah,
what you're creating, particularly the way you described it.
yeah.
It just made me think of,
It is.
um,
It's a very constructed, odd book. Um, I didn't get a lot of things from my parents' homes.
mhm,
Because I have a small house, and um, but my father gave me this album even before. He gave me this album shortly after my mother passed away, and it is an album that my mother made for him as a Christmas gift when my brother and I were. I think Jeff was. He might have been 3 or 4. I might have been 2. And she wrote a beautiful letter to my father. And then she appended it. She added to it when my sister was born 4 years after me. It is really interesting to see her captions in the white pencil. Um, and yes, she built this square photo by square photo tucked into the ears of time, as I say in the poem. The process of writing this poem, it was a little bit daunting. I knew, of course, the first line, I am from Tadpole Creeks, because when I think back on my childhood, that's what I really think of, me and this little creek and the tadpoles and, the mica slivers and my little stone collection in the basement. I was very much an outdoors person, would rather play kickball than anything else, and became an ice skater
mm,
when we moved to Boston for a year, and I skated on ponds. I was deeply loved by, I felt the love of my grandmother and my uncle on my mother's side. I respected very much my father's father in particular, but there was a different kind of affection,
mhm,
much more distant there. And my grandmother, the one I wrote the book about, died when I was 9. She has been a source of enduring mystery to me.
mm,
And just when I was 9 and my father had Jeff and my sister Janice and I, it was mischief night. So sat us on the bench outside the house to tell us that our grandmother had passed away. She'd been sick with stomach cancer for
mm,
7 years prior to that.
mm,
And I remember just watching the sky, and it became a enduring thing for me that I would, always look for her there, always find her there. And so I've always felt her very near. It just was always, well, she's just there. You know, I see a beautiful cloud in her color orange or peach, and yeah, there she is. So she's always been there. So this poem has a lot of her and her house at 6840 Geyer in Southwest Philadelphia. But it has my brother and me. My brother would climb trees, and we lived in a development called Woodbine for a while. Jeff would be up there and in search of blue jays. Jeff was a master Monopoly and checkers player. We had this old
Mm-hmm.
card table. So the process of writing the poem was very, it was lovely to have the structure to overlay memory on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I would have, um, you know, the part where it's sort of this religious piece of
Mm-hmm.
the original poem. And then, yeah, my mother, I am from the Lord is my shepherd. My mother said that all the time. And Good Friday, hush. My mother would make sure that for the 3 hours of Good Friday, we would sit in quiet. Um, and so there are many conjunctions and collisions in this poem that I wrote that I would not have come upon if I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't had your gift of the prompt.
Aren't I mean the art prompt's fun. That's sort of
Yeah,
what they do for us, and I agree with a lot of what I mean. I felt the same way about the religious piece. I wouldn't have thought about it because I was not really raised with a religion,
yeah.
um, but Catholicism was all around us, and so was New Age spirituality, and I just wouldn't have. And it was so much of the air I was breathing, but I didn't identify that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how the prompt
Yeah,
kind of like prods you.
yeah.
Hey, everyone's got something. What's your something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, as I said at the outset, the deliberate broken grammar
Mm-hmm.
is a real open door in this
Mm-hmm.
poem.
Mm-hmm.
It would have annoyed me if it was a simple overlaying process without
Mm-hmm.
weird grammar, weird nicks and tucks in the structure of sentences. I would not have enjoyed the process because I don't write in simple, straightforward sentences most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. So I would have felt it a responsibility
Mm-hmm.
if it had been that kind of exercise, but this felt like an opportunity.
Oh, good. I think that's the goal. And I think Georgella would love hearing that. Because when I was talking to her about poetry, she's like, don't get too wrapped up in how they teach it in school.
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
right what's true.
Yeah.
So, well, anything else, Beth? This has been a real pleasure. I'm
No.
grateful that we persevered.
What is Beth bad at? Well, on a list of 3,000 things, technology would be on the top. Don't tell
You-
Owen no, because Owen knows everything about technology. Um, so I am delighted that we finally got a chance to talk. That we figured out the right. This was actually round 3 because I thought it was Tuesday. So we're even now. You thought it was 2. I thought it was Tuesday.
Oh,
We're
good.
Monday.
I know.
So thank you, and I know you're going to
Yes.
post this on your own Substack, right?
I will post it on my Instagram
Okay.
and then I will post it on YouTube and I'll share that link with you.
Okay.
You can post it anywhere you'd
Okay.
like. Go for it.
I will, because you're lovely to talk to.
Well, so are you. And I've honestly really been looking. I just want to share with people. I reached out to Beth and she said something really kind, like it would be my honor to join you. And I almost started crying when you said that because I was just like, oh well, it would be my honor to have you join me. So I just every interaction that I've ever had with you has just been so lovely,
Oh,
and
thanks.
it's noted. Like even if I'm not aware, it's just there. Like when I think of you or when I read something of yours, I just feel like warmth, and I wanted to let you know that you're putting that out into the world, and it
I
matters.
really, that's very, very kind of you. Thank you very much for saying that. So,
So thank you, Beth, and to everyone who joined
wait, now
us.
you have to tell me how to get
Oh,
off.
I will end it and you will be done.
Okay.
You don't have to do anything. Okay.
All right. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.